Welcome to the Startup Grind.
I have to say, she's our most beautiful guest, right? How are you tonight? Good. Are you excited?
I'm excited, yeah. I'm super happy to be here and honored that future and existing entrepreneurs are here and to hear my story. I hope that you get something out of it.
So let's just get a little bit of background about you. If you could just give us kind of a little story brief. I know it's a lot. So you guys all have a book that she has given all of you, so you're going to have a great, easy read. I actually read the book, and it's super inspiring, and she's done so much. I mean, it's like, wow. So if you could give us a little kind of, little burst of
all right,
your
like
past.
a little, like the cliff notes?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am, I'm sure I'm all don't bring out okay, I am a self-made entrepreneur, which means that I didn't come from a traditional background. Everything that I made and have done has been on my own. A few things that you would probably be surprised about is that I did not finish high school. I have a 10th grade education, and I became emancipated when I was 15. I've worked full-time ever since, and I've been in kind of a socioeconomically disadvantaged upbringing, which was very non-traditional. So just to kind of back that up a bit, you can think about that, meaning I'm the eldest of 6 brothers and sisters. My mother and father are divorced. I'm half Mexican and half Irish, and came from a domestically violent upbringing, which led my siblings, my mother, and I to live in a shelter for battered women at the young age of 9. And then I became a pediatric burn survivor, which ultimately, I was burned severely at the beach. Can you believe this? Like, totally wasn't some family ritual or anything. We were just playing on the beach and somebody buried hot coals in the sand. And I stepped on them and had 3rd and 4th degree burns. And believe it or not, I ended up here at UC Irvine, which was one of the only burn centers, and I'm totally going to age myself right now, 1979. So I was a patient at that time. And that forced my mother and all of my brothers and sisters for us to live in Orange County, which I credit to changing my environment. And sometimes if you want to change your life, you have to change your environment. And it starts right there. So since then, I've gone on to worked for cool companies like Victoria's Secret, worked for BCBG, I lived in New York, I was bi-coastal, I've done a lot of traveling, and lucky enough to work with my very best friend. We started Petals. We've ramped it up for 10 years, sold it for 7 times EBITDA. If you know what that means, it's like really good. So, and now we've started our 2nd startup because we didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. Okay.
Wow, that was good.
All right, thank you.
Did you practice?
No, I'm so nervous. Okay.
Don't be nervous. Do you believe entrepreneurs are born, or do you become one?
Okay, so I think that entrepreneurs are born to become entrepreneurs or help entrepreneurs be successful. And we're weird, so we're weird people. We think differently, we see things as a big picture. It's like, I see the whole Milky Way of a couple stars and one moon, maybe a couple planets over here, and it's like, okay, Tina, just hold on, we're gonna do 2 stars, 1 moon, cut the rest. So you gotta get those people that are the actual implementers of your vision, but if you don't have the people that have the vision in the first place, then all we would have is a bunch of bean counters and the world would never go round. Right?
Right.
Okay.
How did your life experience influence Foot Petals?
Oh my God, Foot Petals. First of all, I'm like a total high heel hog. Like, I totally love
She loves
high
fashion.
heels. I was like born to do runway shows. I did in the living room for my mom and dad. My sister dressed her up. My poor little brother, I used to dress him up as a girl. Like, it was just so fun. So I've been wearing high heels and practicing since I was 5. And it didn't help matters that I eventually went to work for Victoria's Secret, and then later went on to work in New York City for BCBG Max Azria as they were launching their couture collection or, real runway shows. So everything that you saw in the Double Wears Prada is totally true. It was my whole life.
How did it influence here?
So, being addicted to high heels, growing up in Orange County, and being a pediatric burn survivor, my feet are super sensitive. So what they say is necessity is the mother of invention, right? So when I moved to New York, I wasn't going to do the like super cute work outfit and then sneakers. Like I saw all these people, I'm like, oh my god, I'll never do that. So of course I like went out in the snow and slush and pumps and high heels and open toes. I was like doing the splits, James Brown, like falling in the black ice. Like I didn't care. I just totally had to overcome it. And then when the runway models were doing, when we were getting ready for shows, we would have to scrape up their shoes outside on the asphalt. We'd put masking tape on the bottom. We'd put like all these like ugly insoles inside. I'm like, geez. And then one day it just hit me. I was like, oh my god, hello, why doesn't somebody make designer insoles for high heels? And you know, that was it.
That was it. And I think I remember in your book where you actually like would make them in, you would make little tissue things inside your shoes.
Like overeaters, like all these things, like cut them around and color the sides so they wouldn't show in my shoes because I figured out a way to kind of offset the balance. And once I was on a date, I kind of like kicked off my shoes and he was like, what's that in your shoe? And I was like, oh my god, I just wanted to die. So, bing, like out of necessity came the invention.
So that was your moment of clarity.
It was, yeah.
All companies, including startups, live and die by their ability to build a following. Do you have any tips or ideas that have helped or worked for you that you can share with us?
When you want to build a following, it's important to kind of create a product or a service that you are authentic about. Because if you're not authentic about what you're doing, then I don't know if you could really be relatable in what you're developing or selling. So I think it's really important to have a core, but also I think it's really important to find a niche, find a need, and then find those people. In my philosophy, I've really not wanted to ever pay for advertising. I know that all the advertisers probably like hate me right this minute, but the point is that I think it's more credible to get editorial support or coverage that are from real, authentic users and real people. So what I like to do is create a cult-like following. So it's like the insiders, underground. You know, there's huge brands out there that are worldwide, and yeah, you kind of do the same thing, but if you want to get to the masses, that's one angle. You have to spend money in advertising. But if you want to stay niche and you want to stay kind of like underground, then you got to kind of create that vibe and be authentic. So I really used PR and networking as our biggest tool. Building relationships. Like, let's just say, authentically speaking, I was at an event and the keynote speaker was the CEO of Home Shopping Network. And she, I mean, I had no idea, I was like, my family's gonna meet this lady. She's like, oh, you know. So the producer of the event comes to my dinner table and says, Tina, we have an emergency. Is there anything you can do to help me? Like, it's a shoe emergency. And I was like, oh, put on my cape. No, I'm just kidding. I was like, so they pull me in the ladies' room and she's like, this is Mindy Grisman. She's the CEO of HSN. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? You know, so like, she rips off her shoes and I put them in there, and it was a moment that she like transformed. She's like, I can't do this speech. I'm not going to walk on stage barefoot, and I cannot wear these shoes. And all of a sudden, she was like, oh my God, thank you. Next 8 years on live television with HSN. So that was like a real, you know, authentic moment that was, if you couldn't like ask for that kind of advertising or credibility and like a stamp of approval, right? And then on top of that, you know, the other thing is don't get too psyched about stepping out of your bounds or think that you're too hot that you could just do anything and it's gonna like turn the boat, because I like blew it so big time on one of these things. I thought everybody was like, oh, since you made insoles for women, can't you do it for guys? And I was like, psh, totally. Oh my God. So I like went to school, I became a certified podorthist, I learned how to like, I could actually like build a limb for someone that's missing, like an amputee or has a deformation. Like I know all the anatomy and all the requirements to do that. I didn't choose to go into that as a field. It was me and like 20 weird old guys in this whole class. It was so creepy. So I was like, oh my God. Anyway, it was hard to get through this whole thing. I got the certification, but it didn't mean that just because I did something well that was authentic for myself, it doesn't mean that automatically I would know what's right for a guy. So I made copper insoles for men. They were they were the best insoles in the market, but men don't care. So I went out to, launch it at a whole entire chain nationwide, a big department store. They bought into Fisher's, and I swear to God, I still have those freaking insoles in my garage right now. Every time I see them, I'm like, oh my God. So you got to do your research. You got to think about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, the lesson learned in that particular moment was that men in department stores made up 1% of their total business. So it was kind of like an add-on extra little service that they provided, me not knowing, assuming, hello, women's shoes is of course going to be the biggest department in the overall business of the department store. Don't assume anything, do your homework. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
So you talk about in your book, as well as I've heard you speak at different events, the 3 R's, the core values. Can you kind of elaborate on those specific 3?
Yeah. Okay, so when I met my first angel investor, he taught me about the 3 M's. I'll talk about that later, but the 3 R's is what I developed not only for my personal life, but also for business. So the 3 R's start with, first thing, the most valuable asset that you personally own, but only you can take it away from yourself. Nobody else can ruin it. Nobody else can take it away from you except you. And that's your reputation. So a reputation, looking somebody in the eyes, promising, giving your word, a handshake is a handshake is a handshake, and that is my word, is golden. So I'll give you an example. When we started Petals, I was literally living in Santa Monica, had kind of just come off of a .com bubble that went doggone, and so I was looking for work, but without a formal education, there were people out there that were taking anything, so I was really cast to the side. I was so offended that this one company starts with a G. I'm just kidding. Offered me a position as a assistant store manager. I was like, are you kidding me? I was global merchandising director for BCBG, all over the world built shops, and you're going to give me an assistant management job because I don't have a formal education. And yeah, take it or leave it. People are lined up outside. It was during that crash, right? And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally gonna have to leave it. So that was kind of the catapult that put me into, what was the question?
The 3 R's.
The 3 R's. Okay, so the reputation. So thinking about all that time of the business that I had done, working with other companies and for other companies, I was paid a lot of money to do business and transactions for them. I was responsible for a lot of business with vendors. So one of the vendors happened to be a printer. So imagine we're in the marketing and merchandising division. So this printer, I came to him and I said, listen, Sam, I don't have any money, but I have this killer idea. Is there any way that you'll print all my marketing collateral on these boxes? Because I swear one day I'll pay you. I can't pay you right now, but if you do this, I'll pay you. He's like, Tim, I look in your eyes and I know you'll pay me. I have no doubt. 2 years later, I owed him $250,000 before I started paying him back. We're still doing business today, and I'll say that he's a primary investor in Savvy Travelers, because that is the power of the reputation. So the next one is being resourceful. I might not have known it at the time, but when I was a little girl living in the shelter for battered women, it was run by nuns, and it was a Catholic shelter. So we would have to go to the basement and pick clothes. Okay, so it was the funnest thing of my whole life. I was a total diva, right? So I was like, oh my God, fashion show dress, my sister, you better work. Okay. And then all of a sudden I look over and the nuns are picking the clothing out of the trash bags and boxes that people dropped off. I just had this sick feeling. I didn't know what that meant, but it meant that I had what is referred to now commonly as Latino pride. So I was like, take those off, we're no charity case. I didn't know it. I was kind of too proud for my little 9-year-old self. Later, as I look back on that, food stamps, welfare, HUD housing, all of the things that were afforded us, they were resources to provide us an opportunity. My grandmother immigrated here from Mexico in the 1920s, because of the opportunity of America. So I'm here to say that it is 100% alive and real. So being resourceful is only being resourceful if you do something with it. It's not charity, unless you choose to be sloth, right? So then the last R is the most important, and I always kind of describe it as like if you are bouncing a basketball. Every time you're bouncing a basketball, that basketball is resilient. It's going to bounce back. Slam it down, slam dunk it, smash it, pass it, whatever, and it's going to bounce back. So being resilient is the toughest thing that you can be, and that's the differentiator between successful entrepreneurs and unsuccessful. So those are the 3 R's: reputation, resourceful, and resilience.
There are many lessons learned throughout one's journey. Is there one lesson that stands out for you that's been the most impactful?
Oh my God, aside from the men thing, I was like, I can't look past that one. I was like, oh. I would say choosing to take a minority stake at a point where we were exploding. We couldn't fulfill orders fast enough for the orders that we had committed to. So I had to go in the middle of the night, take a red eye to Ohio, get on a plane, and offer the manufacturers that called me the day before and said, we're not shipping any of your products because you're past due on your bills. So I got on a plane, changed in the bathroom into a business suit, rented a car, drove to the middle of BF Wadsworth, Ohio. Is crazy, right? So I go there, and I'm like, gentlemen, there's these 5, white guys, older guys, this lady's gonna come in here, some hotshot chick from La La Land, we're gonna talk to her. Yeah, I was like, guys, I have an offer you can't refuse. Well, I hope you won't refuse it. Anyway, the deal was made at that day when I showed all the numbers, and I showed the excitement and the passion that I had behind the brand of what we were doing. They were in a position to learn marketing and merchandising from me, but they were also in a position where they can afford to lose an investment where I couldn't. So we both took a chance on each other. I decided at that point to sell the majority of the company, 55%, to them. They bought out my initial partner, and I remained the single largest shareholder. So the majority was divided amongst those 5 men. We grew the company for the next 6-7 years, and then we eventually sold it for $14 million cash. So I watched it being traded on the stock exchange. Everybody walked away, and we all made money.
That's amazing. And you were really persistent. I loved that story when I was reading the book because she literally had no money.
Oh my God,
you had no money,
and you
left.
Watches, it was
in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I just had to take the red eye because it was the cheapest flight,
So that's a good lesson to
There's
never
no
give up.
hotel needed, yeah.
So all startups have various ups and downs. Can you share an experience that you felt would be helpful to some entrepreneurs today?
I think one of the most important lessons that I've ever learned was learning how to read financial statements. And I know it sounds super boring and everybody clicks off, but if you don't know the answers, and that goes back to the 3 M's, money, marketing, and management, which I talk about in my book, you have to know off the top of your head, how much money do you need? When do you need it? When am I going to see a return on my investment? You don't know that if you don't have a solid business plan. Now remember, everyone I would go to was saying, Tina, where's your business plan? Where's your business plan? Where's your business plan? Where's your business plan? I was like, I got a plan. I'm going to sell a million of these things. Okay, we're all going to make lots of money. But that didn't, because I had a 10th grade education. I didn't know how to structure a real business plan. So that, I think, is understanding the steps that it takes to build a business plan. I'm also super ADD, OCD, so a business plan was like torture, okay? I sum it up into the 3 M's. How much money do you need? When do you need it? When are you going to receive the return on my investment? And then you do the next M, and that's marketing. How is the consumer going to hear about your product and what's going to drive them to action? And then how much money is it going to cost? When am I going to, how much do you need? When am I going to see the return? Then the last, also living in Los Angeles and having a pipeline straight to celebrities, product placement, creating that cult-like vision, having this inside track to understanding how to create a pop culture trend is very important. I learned that through Victoria's Secret. I learned that through BCBG, and I was paid a lot of money by them to continue to do that kind of work. So I already knew how the whole game was played with major department stores and retailers and PR. And the last M is management. And the key to everything is letting the experts do their job. So who's going to run your sales? Who's going to run the accounting? Who's going to run the PR? Who's going to run the marketing? Who's going to run the HR? Who's going to do the payroll? Who's going to do the taxes? Who's going to do... I'm not going to do all that. Forget it. If it was up to me, I'm just going to tell you, I would be like, we would be out of business. So you have to hire the right team. You're only as strong as your infrastructure. And that, I think, is the biggest lesson, is your infrastructure is what supports you. And I kind of equate that to being in California. Since our infrastructure, we're built like our buildings are on rollers, we're ready for an earthquake to happen. So is your business ready for an earthquake to happen? Are you on rollers? Can you withstand it?
Company culture matters. It doesn't just happen on its own. We need to create it. Having a strong and clear culture can exert a positive effect on the people behind the company. Are there any values you, as a leader, have adopted into your company's culture?
Oh, totally. I mean, we're just straight up. First of all, it's mostly women because we're multitaskers. It's not by choice. It just happens to be that if you want to get a job done, hire a woman. If you want to talk about getting a job done, hire a woman. That was Margaret Thatcher that said that, wasn't me? But one of the things that we just say right from the onset is we cuss like sailors. If that offends you, please don't work here. Because you can F off. No, just so that's, I mean, there's certain things where you just, there's a luxury by being a private entity. And by being a private entity, you have the right to run your business, and it's an at-will state, California. You don't have to work here. You can if you want to. That's it. So I kind of abide by that. If you like what we're doing, also really standing behind our staff and creating this family environment is super important. We like to hire millennials, youngsters, because we're teaching, we're in a teaching environment, but we're also looking for fresh and new ideas. And one of the big things is, okay, if you're coming to the meeting and you have a complaint, you can only complain if you have 2 solutions that you're suggesting. Otherwise, you can shut up or until you figure out a better way to do it. And then performance reviews and all of that, and just ask a simple question. If you were me and this was your company, what would you do better? What would you do that I'm not doing today? And I think that listening to those things and taking them into consideration, letting people fail, is, important.
So what has been your favorite role on your journey so far?
Oh my God, I would have to say I'm super blessed because I met my very best friend in New York 20 years ago at BCBG, and she's like the guru of sales. So she was international sales director, and I really had a light bulb moment one day when we were at a trade show talking about our products, and I got into a fight with a buyer because they were like, I could buy these things for $1. They kept groaning at me, and I was like, oh my God, you should. And you should get the hell out of here. Over my dead body, I'll never sell you. Get out of here. Curse the dude. So at that day, I realized I'm not a salesperson, okay? Once the company was sold, that company got to buy our products, but I held very firm to that silly little thing. It was just like, knowing who you are, what you're good at, and also having the luxury and the opportunity to work with my best friend. We laugh, we're total jokesters, we have fun, and we have a good time. I think that's been my best role, like my best experience, and then also being a mentor.
Balance is important in the life of an entrepreneur. How do you manage to balance your personal and your professional or business life?
Okay, so I'm 47, and I'll tell you, it hasn't come until the last 2 years where I really figured out a psychotic formula. So if you want to pay attention, it's, I told you, type A, OCD, ADD, my mom said OMFG, right? So here's the thing, compartmentalizing is great. Compartmentalizing is super important. So when you walk, if you're going to do something, you walk into a room, and then you close the door and you walk into another room, and by the time you get to the third room, what you were doing, you forgot what you were going there in the first place for. That's what doors are for. So doors were specifically designed so that you can put separation between circumstances. So what I've learned to do is physically compartmentalize my business versus my personal. So I physically get up and go to work, even though in the very beginning, for the first 2 years of Savvy, we had it in my pool house behind my house. But I would get dressed, take a shower, and go to work, even though it was like 10 steps outside my bedroom door. And then physically turning my cell phone off, putting it on charger by the front door of the house, so I go into my bedroom and go to sleep. Imagine. So if I have to really get up and check my phone, I have to physically get up. Is it that important? No. I have like blackout curtains. Blackout curtains are the greatest thing, because if you're traveling all the time as an entrepreneur and you have crazy hours, you have to let your body tell you when to rest, and you have to get into that zone. So I also have a sound machine. I have, oh my God, I sound like a total freak right now. On the corner. No, it's really, it's important. I get all of my thoughts out before I leave my office of what I'm doing the next day, my priorities. So I already know before I walk out and close that door what I'm doing tomorrow. So I'm not coming home going, oh God, I gotta remember this, I gotta remember that, I gotta remember that. Right? So it's all about compartmentalizing, separating, and then keeping those borders, and keeping that, even though I work with my family, sometimes there's crossover, we have big fights, but there's a big, you gotta keep that separation there. Business, professional time.
So what's next for Tina Aldatz?
Okay, so, we started Savvy Travelers, and this whole thing started because I got kicked off of an airplane. I really did. I told you that whole story when I got kicked off of an airplane, and all I want to do is master the carry-on. We didn't want to check in baggage, pay the $25, like everything's going so crazy. You know that business travel is up so much, and now over 50% of business travelers are women now. So we need all this gear and stuff. So my best friend Margarita and I have decided that we're going to master this carry-on, and we're going to make it through security, no matter what, with not having to check a bag. Because there's time, it's all that time that you lose, at least a couple hours. A lot of times it goes directly from my office to a flight to a meeting, okay? So we created this whole collection of wipes, which you guys all have samples in your bags, but it's individually wrapped so they can't be contaminated. Series of wipes that are designed specifically for women. So like this one does, sunglasses and cell phones, there's makeup remover, anti-perspirant deodorant, like all these specifically, application-specific products in an individually wrapped wipe. So that's one. Secondly, I've written a book. The book has recently been adapted to a screenplay, and it's being shopped around right now to A-list celebrities for hopefully a movie at some point. And the other thing that I really, really enjoy doing is being involved in politics and in the community. So I'm on the board for a Make-A-Wish Foundation as well.
And you've gotten so many, you've been recognized so much just in the last, even much more in the last couple of months. I feel like... Yeah,
it's been a role.
Every week I'm like, whoa, another recognition, I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It is. But it's also very humbling, and it brings me back to the full circle where you start thinking about what represents that 2 percentile. It's still old white men. So you have to kind of take that into account. And then you think about what percent of that is women, what percent of that percent is Hispanic women, right? So we're not even a crumb in the pie chart. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think it's just being a trailblazer, and getting recognition is good because then it kind of gives me an opportunity to share my story, talk about things like this. And if anyone, I just pray every time that if someone gets some inspiration and he learns one thing, then I've done my job today.
The last question I have is there any one piece of advice that you'd like to leave with us that you either, on a positive note, just going to bring out our note?
I do. I had to look at my notes. Okay. So, yeah.
I'm the same way, as you can see.
That's being a type A. You're preparing to think through, and then when you get in front of cameras and lights and people, you're like, oh my God. Okay, and then, so, piece of advice. If you are an entrepreneur, understand financial statements. Talk to your accountant. Know where the dollars are going, what the plan is, how long you're going to, what's your burn rate, where's your break-even rate. All those things they matter. So what's the percentage of businesses that fail? It's crazy. So in order to be a successful business, you really do have to plan ahead. You really have to think it through. But at the same time, you got to take a risk. And if it were up to the bankers and the accountants and all the bean counters in the world, then none of us entrepreneurs would be sitting here today. So if we weren't crazy, they wouldn't have jobs. So that's what I say. So even though they don't like it, we're still going to do it, but they're going to have to fix it. So that's the thing. Learn how to read financial statements and then make your mission hit that number every month.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing with us. Let's get